All right, everyone. This is Zero Budget Geek, and welcome to Designer Interview. Today we are talking with Doug Levandowski. Doug, thanks for joining me. How you doing?
Oh, I'm great, Eddie. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
It's really great. It's funny. You think about how fast time passes. It's actually I was trying to count it today, and it seems I think it's almost 2 years from when we first met. And it's funny, sort of, in the industry. A lot of times you kind of only meet each other at conventions and stuff like that. So much time passes by, but it feels so fast. And it was at Metatopia a couple years ago, the game designer convention, where I think we first met real briefly, but it
Yep.
wasn't until, like, I think the next year we were at DexCon, and then I that's when you were showing off Gothic Doctor
Yep.
for the first time, and we got to really talk more then. And then we've just seen each other many times since then.
Yeah.
For my viewers, Doug has done a number of games. He's done Gothic Doctor and Unpub. Now, were the co-creator on those?
Yep. I was co-creator on both of those. I co-created them with two different folks. Gothic Doctor, I co-created with a buddy of mine from high school, John McNeil, and then Unpub, I co-created with J.R. Honeycutt, who runs all kinds of
A
stuff.
lot
He
of
does
things, yeah, yeah.
DFW Nerd Night, Nerds Table, which I write for now. He created Twerk, a game called Doug Doug Goose Caboose, which is, yes, based on me. Um, and Unpub, I think. Oh, and North South East Quest with Jason Tagmeyer.
Oh, okay. I saw that actually when we were at the last Metatopia. I got to see that, and then we didn't really get to talk about it, or get to check it out. But anyway, we're here to talk about you now. If I don't remember quite correctly, the Gothic Doctor was a Kickstarter that you did,
Yes.
right? And how did that go? How was that experience for you? Was
Uh,
that your
the,
first Kickstarter?
it was my first and my second Kickstarter.
Oh, how does that work?
So the first one went not so great because we hadn't really done our homework at all. We didn't know, all the steps that go into making a successful Kickstarter and all the blood, sweat, and tears. So we hit not even half of our funding goal. So we regrouped, we replanned, we got the game into a more finished state, play tested it more, got it out there. When we first launched, we were launching with nobody really having any idea what it was, who we were, any of that stuff. And so we spent a year like regrouping and marketing it, and finalizing the game, getting the art done, all that stuff, and then relaunched a little over a year later, and had a really great Kickstarter experience. We made, I think it was 20,000. I think we were asking for 7,000, and we made 20, which was really cool.
Now I remember that because we were talking about it at Dextopia. Is it
Yeah,
not Dextopia? DexCon,
right.
and I think at the time that's when you were doing the relaunch, or you were
Yep.
getting ready to do the relaunch. And I remember we talked about it, and you used all the things that you learned to do that. Um, and now you're taking all of those lessons learned
hmm
and applying it to the new game, the You're Fired.
Yes, and I'm applying the biggest lesson I learned, which is don't do your own Kickstarter. Uh, so after that, I pretty much decided that kickstarting things wasn't really for me. That's not the fun part for me.
Hmm. It's tough. It
It's
is
really
tough.
tough. Yeah, and we did okay, and it was really awesome to get all that support from the community. But it was so much work that then didn't go into game design. So it was
Yeah.
so much time spent on the marketing and on the page and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like a lot of people don't realize that, like, when you're an independent publisher or just an independent game designer, how I mean you have to wear so many hats.
yep.
You gotta do the designing in the game, but you gotta kind of do your own marketing and everything else that normally in a bigger company would be spread about spread about many other people. So it can be really hard. But the greatest thing that I love is that there's so many people in the community willing to work with each other and help each other out. And so like this Kickstarter now, you're doing it with Jason. You're
Yeah,
working with Jason too, though, or he's just running the Kickstarter. How is that working out?
he's running the Kickstarter. So what happened was I was developing You're Fired. I've been developing it for probably about 2 years now, and played it with him when I was still thinking I was going to self-publish it. And he played it and he enjoyed it. And so then when I decided I wasn't going to self-publish, I was thinking, who should I talk to? And he was honestly like the very first choice for it.
Yeah.
And lucky for me, he was interested, and so it's been super great working with him. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm very curious about the You're Fired. The artwork looks just great. I looked over the Kickstarter. By the way, I got to tell you, one of the best intro videos for a Kickstarter. I absolutely loved it. I was checking it out. I was cracking up, especially when I saw people that I recognized, all these other game designers,
Right.
getting in the elevator and everything. And that was just hilarious. Guys, if you haven't seen the video, I mean, you should be getting on the Kickstarter anyway, because it's a phenomenal looking game. But the intro video is just absolutely hilarious. And, all those people in there, there are other game designers and people in the industry. So that was really funny that you recruited them in there.
Yep.
And but I want to know more. I haven't had a chance to even check out much about the game other than what's on the Kickstarter. So tell me and the viewers tell us about You're Fired.
Sure. So You're Fired is a real quick game for 2 to 4 players. Originally designed as a 2-player game, but the Kickstarter, the main pledge level, comes with up to the 4-player expansion. And so the premise is that you and your opponent are the smartest people in your divisions, your separate divisions, and your company's been acquired by a multinational corporation who've realized that your 2 offices are totally redundant. And so your bosses come to you and your opponent's bosses come to them and said, we need to make sure we look busy while corporate's here so that all of us don't get laid off. And so now you have to make sure that your office is looking busy and try to take out as many people from the other office as you can before the boss gets fired.
Okay. Now I notice is it primarily a card game?
Yep. Yeah, it's all cards. One of the higher levels on there has playmats, which Jason designed, which look awesome, aren't functionally necessary, but I'm really excited to get them. It's gonna.
Yeah, they look good. I saw.
Yeah.
I took a look at it and really cool. I mean, there's a lot to be excited about it, especially the fact that you funded in 13 hours?
About 13 hours, yeah.
Got the full funding. So, I know a lot of people wait to see if a Kickstarter is going to fund before they could jump on the bandwagon. Guys, it funded already, so jump on it. I mean, I can't say enough about it. It looks just really good. And, especially because I know you and I know so many other people that have been involved in the project and, that you've, because I've seen you getting input from so many different people on how to, from how to make the game as, good as you can make it to how to get a Kickstarter, up and running to the point where you decided, hey, I'm not the one that's going to do this Kickstarter. I'm going to get somebody else. And Jason's really good at it. I mean, he's done a number of them. And so, very excited about that. Now, I was reading in I think something that Jason wrote. He said that originally the game had a mafia theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, and then he basically kind of wasn't too crazy about that and decided, or suggested that you change that. Now, I've dabbled in game design and I know what it's like to have, I don't want to say criticisms about your baby or people kind of, hack at a baby. How did you feel when he suggested the change to, the theme?
So actually, it wasn't him who suggested the theme change.
Okay.
So when he first played it was mob themed, and I was working on it, and I thought, God, there's a lot of like mob themed games out there. And I want, like with Gothic Doctor, one of the things that I love so much about that one is how rich the theme is.
It's great, yeah.
You're treating monsters from Victorian literature, like it's very out there. And so I was thinking, I could just make another mob game, okay, fine. and I was thinking about it. I was thinking, but if I can come up with something more interesting, more exciting, more different, I want to do that. And so I was actually driving up to Boston with my wife, and was doing, like we were talking about something. I got real quiet. She was like, "You're thinking about game design. What is it? Tell me." And I was like, it's the big hit, which is the name I had for the game at the time, because you were trying to get the big hit on the Don at the end.
Uh-huh.
And she said, "Yeah, what about it?" I said, I don't like the theme." She said, "Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of Mafia games out there." I said, "Yeah, so I just don't know, like, what else you would do where you're trying to, like, eliminate people. Like, it just seems like such a natural theme." She said, "Well, like an office." I was like, "Are you kidding me? I've been thinking about this for like 2 months. I've been agonizing over this, and you're just like, oh, an office." She was like, "Oh yeah, I mean, you've been thinking about this for a while. I thought of this 2-3 weeks ago." I was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" She said, "Well, you never asked."
Well, of course, the wives know us better than they've got the answers.
Yeah, and so that was a couple weeks before I left for Gen Con not the most recent one, but the one before that. And so I was out there and was having, like, convention insomnia, which I get because I'm just too excited to be playing board games.
Yeah.
And so I got back to the hotel room at like 3 a.m. and was like, "I got to do this right now. I got to change this." So went through and, with the blank playing cards and the magic markers, redid it, and then played it with a couple people, including actually Jason.
Mm-hmm.
I was hanging out with him and Jay Treat, getting some dinner, and popped it out because it's a quick, super light, easy to teach game. And he played it and he said, "I like this theme. I really like this." I said, "Oh, thank you." So yeah, but
what was the hardest part? I mean, what was the hardest part of designing You're Fired for you?
That's a great question. This was one that really came pretty naturally in a lot of ways. I think so. So I had the idea and I whipped it up and tried it out when it was a mob game with my wife. About 15, 20 minutes after, and it worked. There were like glitches to work out and stuff, and the end game could get into a cycle and all that stuff. But made some changes, and one of the things that made it easier to design this one was that I got really, really good at listening to what other people said about it. I think one of the problems I had with Gothic Doctor was, like you said, like that was my baby. Like that was really the first game I had been involved with, and it was just really like very personal in a way. Not that there's a bunch about my like life history in there, but like it felt like a very like my design and my buddy John's design. And so when people were like, "Well, what about this and this?" It was like, screw you. This is my game. Like,
yeah. Well, you pour your essence into it. I mean,
right.
Never mind the countless hours that you spend like actually making it, but all the other hours, just thinking of. But never mind that. It's just everything that's in it. It's a part of you. You insert a piece of you in it, and it's like almost literally like your baby. So I totally understand that.
So I started working on this game when I was at a point with Gothic Doctor where I was really finally starting to listen to other people. Mm-hmm. So with this one, I said, I think maybe the theme helped too, because at first, since it was a mob theme, I wasn't particularly attached to it, and so I just sort of, like Ivan Turner from Nine Kingdoms was a huge help with play testing. And we would just sit there and, play around, fix something, play around, fix something. And, I just got in the habit of carrying the blank cards with me, carrying the magic markers with me. And when somebody said, "Well, what if you did this?" rather than saying like, "Well, here's why this won't work, do, busting out the card, crossing something out, writing something in, going, "All right, shuffle up, let's do this." Yeah. So that part was easy because it was, the great thing about the community, like you were saying, is just how involved everybody is and how everybody's willing to help. Mm-hmm. And people were great about giving feedback and helping me come up with stuff. So that was cool. Probably the toughest thing was a problem that didn't get fixed until really, really recently. So the way you win the game is one of two ways. You either fire your opponent's boss, and as soon as they get fired, you win.
Right.
Or if you force them to play their boss, you win, because the boss is totally useless, and as soon as the boss does anything, corporate's like, he's useless, fire him, right? and that was the premise for a very, very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
But then once Jason got involved, we were talking about how that it can get to a point in the end game where you just sort of whittle your opponent down, and eventually you just wait. It can get to a point where you say, all right, now I'm going to hold on. I don't need to do anything. They have 3 cards left. That's it. I just have to make them play those 3 cards.
Right.
So then the person was waiting 3 turns to die.
Right.
And it wasn't fun, but I really liked the strategy of it, right? The idea that I can force you into suboptimal play, through strategy. And so it's strategic up to that point, but then at the end it's sort of like, chess. If you have a queen, 2 bishops, and 2 rooks, and your opponent has 1 king, it's over.
Yeah.
You just have to sort of maneuver into place.
You got to kind of go through the motions.
Right. And so Jason said, I really want to trim down that end game. And I said, well, I've been thinking about that. People have said that. They've said they like it except for that, but I don't know what to do. So we thought about it for a while. And he sent me, we did a lot of designing over a direct message on Twitter. Like our DMs, like they changed that 140 character limit on Twitter recently for the DMs.
Yeah.
And ours were just like, boom. Like they just. So he says, I had an idea. He said, how the boss can't do anything? I said, yeah. He said, what if the boss could do one thing? I said, like, just get fired? Like, that's the game. He was like, no. What if the boss could fire a card from your opponent's hand, but if it's not their boss, it's over. Like, they step out, they do this one big thing, and they're like, I'm going to fire that person's boss. And if they fail, corporate says, well, they couldn't do that. Right? And I said, yeah. Like, that. So I think that was the hardest part, getting that end game down to a point where.
That is really, it's like what a lot of writers go through. Like trying to find the right. I mean, it's just as important to get a great beginning, and then you get everything through. But the ending can often really trail off, and and like you said, you felt like, well, no, it was a pretty good ending, and maybe not the greatest, but it's good ending, and it's kind of a good thing that you guys kind of continue to work at it because you found something else, a little nugget, that eureka moment.
Yeah, and what's cool about it now is that it adds another entire level to the strategy. So if I get my opponent down to just a couple cards, I know that they're going to start getting desperate. Mm-hmm. So there are cards that you can have to protect your own boss. And so now, especially if I have the boss in my hand, or if I haven't, he's either in my deck or in my hand. And so now I really have to play a little more cautiously towards the end, because if they are able to come through and say, all right, I'm going to use my boss to fire your boss, and I don't have something to protect that in my hand,
right? Then
I'm in trouble. So it stopped being as much of like a mad dash at the end, where it's just like, okay, well, I got you low. There's one card called the Manager that can either fire a card randomly from your opponent's hand or can save your boss from being fired. So it has that sort of dual use. Mm-hmm. And so rather than automatically being like, boom, Manager, every time I could, I suddenly realized, like, okay, well, now that with Tagmeyer's fix here, like, we really you gotta play more cautiously. You gotta balance that. It's not just get a lead and then exploit it. It's get a lead, but then that makes your opponent act a little, they have to act a little more recklessly if they're gonna, they're gonna go down, they're gonna try to take you with them. So you have to sort of balance that out.
Right.
And so
especially if you guys are both down to like just a few cards left in your hand,
right?
Rather than okay, well, we gotta wait 3 turns. It's like, no, in those 3 turns, I have a chance at like doing something, or or I have a chance of him just kind of screwing up and giving me the win.
Right. Yeah. So that was probably the toughest part of the game, because the gameplay mechanics worked really well. Probably that. Also, one of the big challenges in this was to make it more fun and more fast. One of the things that JR said when he played it, it was actually, he said this the other day. This was actually the first game he and I ever played together. So, and he actually, I was thinking about this on the ride home today. He was the first person ever to play the Office theme of the game.
Okay.
So, but when he played it first, he said, "This is good. This is really solid. It's about 5 minutes too long."
Hmm.
It was like a 25-minute game. And he said, "I want this to be a 15, 20-minute game." And so then it was a matter of, that led to a lot of consolidation of cards. So that got me started on thinking about, okay, well, what cards could get combined, right? So originally the manager could could fire a card randomly, and there was another card that could save the boss from being fired.
All right.
And they were separate. But if I don't have the boss in my hand and I have the card that can save my boss from being fired, that's super frustrating.
Right. It does nothing for you.
Right. So do I play it for no effect, just to get it out of my hand and get a new card? What do I do? So I started thinking about ways to put those together. And we did that with the secretary. We did that with the fall guy. We did that with the manager. And so putting those cards together made it so that not only was the game faster, so now it's down to just 13 people in each office,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, I think it was like 15 or 17 at one point.
Yeah.
It also made it so that one of the things Jason said when he said he was going to publish it was he wanted to be able to get 4 copies into a tuck box.
Mm-hmm.
Because I originally pitched it to him as part of his wallet line, because he has that super
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, those are really cool. I like that.
Right, and so I figured you could do like different offices in each wallet, and he said, no, the way I want to do it is I want to have 54 cards, and I want 4 offices in there. I said,
Wow.
okay, well, that means I got to cut 2 cards from each office. And he said, yup. Like, I don't know
You got to snip
that.
it up.
He's like, well, you're a great designer. Let's figure
Well,
it out.
I have a very good designer friend who's actually not quite published, but the guy's phenomenal, and he's like on the verge of doing some stuff, and he's a really good friend of mine, and he has a YouTube channel. He's doing game reviews right now. I think you met him real briefly at Metatopia, and actually at DexCon, because he was there with me. He's F5. He does and he's got a YouTube channel, and he does in my opinion, the best board game review videos, because he does them in like this animated style.
I'm gonna check
and
that. Let me find a pen here. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
okay, and so one of the things that he's extremely good at, that he's taught me, is like his day job is a writer, and he does a lot of editing, and he looks for ways whenever he's looking at a game design, how can we trim this, how can we combine different mechanics to, either provide the same effect or, something even better. And he's done it, like he's taken a lot of my crappy game designs, and he just chops them up. And it's hard. It's hard because you look at it, it's like, no, what are you doing? It's the way I want it. But then, in the end, it usually ends up being better. It's more streamlined. And as a designer, I think it's really important to stay open, to that input and that advice. I've met so many that are just like, well, no, I know what I'm doing. This is the way it's gonna be because of reasons, and that may be true, but that doesn't mean you cut yourself off to other input. You take the input and you're either gonna take it or not. But I know people that will just immediately shut down. You're talking to them about the game and they're just like shutting down, and you can't really do that. And I think that's a good message for, other aspiring game designers out there, to always be open about that. And what would you say, here's a common question that I know a lot, I know the answer, but for other aspiring game designers, whenever they say, well, what if somebody's going to steal my idea? What would you say to that?
They're not going to steal your idea.
Nobody's going to steal your idea.
Did
you see Gil Hova's seminar about Game Design 101 at Metatopia?
I saw it. I wasn't able to go because I had a play test then, but yeah.
Okay. Well, at the very end, the greatest thing that he says is, the best advice that I can give you is, and he puts in big letters, your idea sucks.
Yep.
And that surprised the whole room, and everybody's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, because ideas, everybody has them. You gotta implement it. And I'm just so happy for you, Doug, that all these ideas that you've been working on for years, because like I said, I only known you like 2 years. I didn't know you've been working on stuff from way before that, and you're seeing fruits of your labor. And I can't imagine. Well, you tell me, how did you feel that moment when you look on Kickstarter and you're past your funding goal?
Oh man, it was great. So I was at I knew it was going to happen, but because I was messaging with a friend of mine, Michelle Ho, who's out in I met her through JR at Gen Con 2 summers ago, and we were chatting, and she said, "Your Kickstarter's going really well." I said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm going to back it. I need to. I have to get home." And I said, "That's cool. I mean, just so you know, it's $25 away from funding." And she was like, "Oh, well, I'm just going to back it right now. What do you need, 25 bucks?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "All right, what's the highest level?" I was like, 40. She was like, "I got that." So,
I saw her comment on Facebook, actually. That was pretty funny, and I wasn't sure what she was talking about. I forgot what she wrote, but she alluded to that, and now I get it.
mhm.
So that's pretty funny. And I think another takeaway from all this, that I think is just so great is how you've persevered through, well, seeming adversity. I mean, Gothic Doctor, the first time you put it out there, it didn't happen.
It tanked.
And
Yeah.
and not only did you not quit, you came back. And you relaunched it and you funded it, and I think that's just a great. What would you say about about that? Like, people that have failed a Kickstarter, what would you say to them about moving forward from there?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think Gil's advice, which I'm gonna like get tattooed on me now, is great. Like, approach it with, my idea sucks,
Hmm.
and then just like break it apart and really look at like what's wrong with it, what's going on with it. And so we did that with the Kickstarter. We just said, okay, this didn't work. We know. I'm going to go against what I just said. I said, we know we have a good idea.
Well, there's a certain point. At a certain point,
Right.
you realize.
Because that was what people were super excited about. It was, oh my God, this theme is cool. This theme is cool. This theme is cool. Even people who hadn't, I mean, nobody who really backed it other than like friends and family had ever even seen the game before. And they just thought, that's an awesome idea. Let's go for it. So we knew we had that, and we play tested it a lot ourselves. So we knew the mechanics were solid. So we said, okay, well, we need to get this out. Like, what are successful people doing that I didn't do?
Hmm.
And so we looked at that and we said, all right, there's this and there's this and there's this. And so we just sort of started working on it. I think the biggest reason that Kickstarters aren't successful is because of either too high of a goal, bad art, or a lack of a community.
Hmm.
And we had I think great art for Gothic Doctor, and I really like the art for You're Fired too.
Hmm.
We didn't have it out there. We didn't
Yeah.
build that community. We
You
thought
got to build the community, and
like people are just going to see it and they're going to want it. No, they're going to need to know who you are. They're going to need to know what you're about. That sort of thing.
yeah.
Um,
And you touch on it, and that's kind of what got me on this idea of doing like these kind of things, designer interviews, because well, it's just another opportunity for people to hear your message, hear about what you're doing. And I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe in the project and thought that it was something worthwhile. And I think there's always a little bit that people can learn from the different things. But we're kind of running out of time here. But Doug, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me, having a chat. And guys, again, if you want to see if you want to see the link to the Kickstarter, it's going to be down in the description box. You've got like another 28 days, right, still left on the Kickstarter, right?
I think we end on December 5th. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So go ahead and back it. There's a lot of stretch goals. I know I didn't get to go through all of them, but I saw that there's a number of stretch goals. And any final words?
Yeah, I would say getting back to the idea of if you're working on relaunching, Jeff King and I did a series called The Road to Relaunch, series of podcasts where we talked about from failure to success and how do you rebuild and come back from that. So if people are interested in that, check that out.
Yeah, that's Jeff King, on All Us Geeks
All Us
podcast.
Geeks, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So
Um, and check out the Kickstarter if it looks like something you would like. Cool. At least watch the video because it was a lot of fun to shoot.
it is. It's phenomenal. Great job.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks you. All right, you take care, Doug.
All right, man. Take it
All
easy.
right, bye bye.
Peace.